We came close to becoming a failed state, which the political scientists define as a state that cannot deliver the basic goods of existence to its people. According to Dr. Deborah Birx, Donald Trump's own COVID-19 advisor, America unnecessarily lost hundreds of thousands of people because of the recklessness and indifference of Donald Trump and his administration. Now the people who brought you the political big lie, claiming absurdly that Trump won the 2020 election, which he lost by more than 7 million votes, now bring you the medical big lie, making the outlandish claim that Dr. Fauci was responsible for causing COVID-19.
Jamie Raskin is absolutely cooking Trump and his sycophants in Congress for failing the American people during the onset of the pandemic, and he's far from done yet.
House Republicans now find themselves in the familiar position where their own investigation debunks their runaway political rhetoric. The investigation of Dr. Fauci shows he is an honorable public servant who has devoted his entire career to the public health and the public interest, and he is not a comic book supervillain. The people bowing down to a twice impeached, convicted felon who told Americans to inject themselves with bleach now want you to believe not only a big political lie, but a big medical lie too.
We need to see so many more Democrats fearlessly taking on the lies the Republican Party has gotten away with for so long to show that there actually are some fighters left in the party who work for their voters instead of their donors, like too many other Democrats in Congress. Now, it's funny that Raskin mentioned the sham Biden impeachment proceedings because the head of the investigation, Representative James Comer, is going to try to pull a fast one on Dr. Fauci later on in the same hearing.
Dr. Murrins wrote to Dr. Daszak, quote, "Peter, from Tony's numerous recent comments to me, they are trying to protect you," end quote. Did you ever talk to Dr. Murrins about Dr. Daszak or EcoHealth Alliance?
I can tell you, regarding what you said, I never spoke about protecting him. I mean, obviously, we knew that Daszak was a grantee, so I may have mentioned and discussed Dr. Daszak because he's a grantee, but I never spoke about protecting him. You're
testifying that he just made that up.
Excuse me?
You're testifying that Dr. Murrins just made that up.
I don't know where he got that, but that's not true.
When these emails were written, you should have known that Dr. Daszak was more than 2 years late on a required progress report with his grant. Dr. Daszak conducted an experiment that resulted in a novel virus showing excess growth, that Dr. Daszak failed to report that experiment, that Dr. Daszak was protecting the Wuhan lab and not sharing its lab notebooks, and that Dr. Daszak failed to disclose obvious conflicts of interest. So why were you trying to protect Dr. Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance?
Comer is trying to build the narrative that Dr. Fauci intentionally and nefariously protected a grantee doctor who Comer and the Republicans are accusing of releasing the coronavirus from their lab in Wuhan. Now, we're not defending Dr. Daszak's numerous breaches of department policy and alleged shady dealings, but this is what the conspiratorial mindset leads to, y'all. Thankfully, Fauci would quickly debunk the accusations that he was the mastermind behind leaking the coronavirus to the world.
I repeat on the record, I have not tried to protect Dr. Daszak. And that's number one. Number two, you said something that's not true, because I did not know about the compliance issues until well after the fact when I was being briefed for going to before a congressional committee. So it wasn't as these things were going on, I knew that he was withholding.
Did you know about Dr. Murrins' close relationship with Dr. Daszak?
Dr. Murrins made it clear that Dr. Daszak was his friend. I did not engage in any of that interaction between them.
You testified and answered the chairman's question that you never had any communication with the intelligence community throughout all of COVID. Did I understand that correctly?
No, you heard wrong. I said I did have communication. I was briefed by the intelligence community multiple times during the COVID issue.
And you never...
The gentleman's time has expired.
No, I think I made it clear. I mean, they were talking about my knowing about a lack of compliance. That became clear, Congressman Raskin, well after the fact. It isn't as if they were not complying and I was not monitoring their non-compliance. I didn't know about it until it was a done deal.
Gotcha.
Republicans are engaging in this political stunt for multiple reasons, but the main few are to sow distrust in government institutions so they can gut them in the future, to prey on the ignorance of the voters, because it's a lot easier to get misinformation, disinformation out if a ton of people don't know about or won't bother to understand the science? And also to shift responsibility for the pandemic response away from Donald Trump. Yeah, you ain't getting off the hook, because it was disastrous for his 2020 campaign. But now let's hear how Jamie Raskin will respond to Comer's absurd line of questioning.
The claim was essentially that you tried to cover up the possibility of there having been a laboratory leak, which of course is perfectly possible. And if this committee were doing its job, we could actually be working to advance the investigation of that. But they would rather assert that you tried to cover up this possibility. Here's the email that you sent on February 1st at 12:38 a.m. Jeremy, I just got off the phone with Christian Anderson, and he related to me his concern about the furin site mutation in the spike protein of the currently circulating 2019 nCoV. I told him that as soon as possible, he and Eddie Holmes should get a group of evolutionary biologists together to carefully examine the data to determine if his concerns are validated. He should do this very quickly. And if everyone agrees with this concern, they should report it to the appropriate authorities. I would imagine that in the USA, this would be the FBI. And in the UK, it would be MI5. It would be important to quickly get confirmation of the cause of his concern by experts in the field of coronaviruses and evolutionary biology. In the meantime, I will alert my U.S. government official colleagues of my conversation with you and Christian and determine what further investigation they recommend. Let us stay in touch. Best regards, Tony. Was this the email where you were putatively trying to cover up the possibility of a lab leak?
Yes, Congressman Raskin, and that's the reason why I mentioned in my opening statement that is it inconceivable that anyone could get out of that I was covering anything up.
Would you have any reason to cover up any new scientific evidence relating to the origins of the COVID-19 virus?
Absolutely not. And that's the reason why it was important to get people together to discuss this in a transparent way.
Have you spent your whole life trying to determine the causes of infectious diseases and then to stop them to protect the American people?
Yes, I have.
Well, Dr. Fauci, I want to join my colleague from Florida in apologizing to you that some of our colleagues in the United States House of Representatives seem to want to drag your name through the mud. They're treating you, Dr. Fauci, like a convicted felon. Actually, you probably wish they were treating you like a convicted felon. They treat convicted felons with love and admiration. Some of them blindly worship convicted felons. Do you have any reason to be afraid of scientific evidence or data or the truth?
Not at all.
When I watch hearings like these, I'm reminded about how much of our time and resources are being wasted on frivolous and obvious political hit jobs that really could be put to better use, like improving our healthcare and education systems. How about our country's infrastructure? Cracking down on corporate greed and white-collar crime? How about ending racism, or just weeding out the people in power who are racist? But that's a long fight. Ending homelessness. There are so many other issues that need our attention, so much more than what's going on here. As I said before, it is a political hit job. Okay, that's it. But what is clear from the Republican Party, they have this strategy of obstruction, that they want to halt progress from happening. So as long as they can do that, they maintain the image of being the party of small government, regardless of whether the legislation is going to help their constituents. So you see why they're screwing over not just people on the left, but also on the right. That's all they care about. Just stopping anybody from having a better life when it comes to people in the middle class or in the lower class. And again, it's tied to capitalism as well. That's a much deeper conversation that we can get into at another time. But it's so infuriating because there are opportunities for us to grow and improve what our country looks like. But we refuse to do that. We refuse to do that. For Rebel HQ, I'm Chris Williamson. We'll see you next time.